very happy to have our international speakers here. And first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for the invitation, especially the organizer, the ROUTE Global Project, and all the institutions that are along with ROUTE in this great event, which is the Ocean Day 2020. Well, for starting too, I'd like to acknowledge the rights and the culture of the traditional communities in our coastlines. I just watched a great panel here from the communities in the coast of Brazil. They were speaking about their struggle to survive and to guarantee their rights, their lands, their culture. And we have to empower these people. So that's why I could not start this panel without acknowledging all their support for the ocean conservation. Well, first of all, before going to our great speaker for today, I'll introduce myself. My name is Mauro, and I was born in Brazil, and I am a lawyer. I graduated as a lawyer in 1998. Since then, I've been working with public interest environmental law, which means that I use law to protect coastlines and the ocean. I mainly work for civil society organizations, and besides that, I co-created an NGO in the south of Brazil, in the city of Florianópolis, and we have been developing many projects since then. The latest project we are developing is the National Program of Surfing Reserves in Brazil, which is a project that tries to involve surfers for creating protected areas where they can take care of it. But my role here is to be the moderator. And so I'll now introduce our speakers, and I would like to thank everyone for being here with us today. For me tonight, because I'm here in the middle of the night in Australia. Right now, I'm here in the University of Newcastle, where I'm doing my PhD. But I would not be happy if I couldn't be awake and take part of this great event, which is one of the most important events in our Ocean Day. Our speakers today will be Bárbara Veiga, who is a photographer. We also have Richard and Judith Lang. They are artists, and they have a great work with recycling and reusing garbage. We also have Sebastian Copeland. He, as Barbara, he is a photographer, and he is an adventure guy and has been traveling all over like Barbara did. Barbara has the book 7 Years and 7 Seas that has been very important for her telling her experience about her role in conservation around the world. We also have here Mr. Charles Burr, who is an oceanographer and our captain. So one thing I would like to start asking for our speakers is Well, our panel is named The Ocean View. And when I first heard this title of the panel, The Ocean View, I remember that a guy called Friedrich Capra, who is a physicist and works as a professor in the Berkeley University in California, where I think some of you are. He says that the ecological crisis is a crisis of perception. And I remember, and I was watching a video, and what inspired him to write his first book, which is The Tao of Physics, was his contact with the ocean. And he tells that the ocean can help you to open your perception and understand that everything is connected, everything is interdependent. Well, we have here people who have been traveling around the world, and probably they can tell us about this connection too. So I would ask our speakers, and I will start with Barbara Veiga. I will ask all of you to introduce yourselves in 10 minutes and tell us how your work and all the connection with the ocean have changed your vision and your perception about the life in our blue planet. So, Barbara, you are welcome here, and please, we want to hear from you.
Hello, Mauro. Hello, everyone. Can everybody hear me well? Yes? Great. Well, it's a huge honor to be with you all here. It's amazing that we have this opportunity to talk about the oceans, our fantastic oceans that I love so much. This has been part of my life since I was born, because I was born in Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil. So the ocean's been part of me for many years. I decided to do beach cleaning when I was young. And then I realized that this connection with the ocean, it's something that has to be part of my life forever. I'm a photographer, filmmaker, also the author of the book 7 Years and 7 Seas. It's about my journey around the globe, working for different organizations, international organizations, to raise the message and reinforce the law to protect the oceans. And as a photographer and filmmaker, I try to share with people the urge of protecting the sea using from beautiful images, inspiring images, to also share with people what's going on, what kind of crimes it's been happening. So my work navigates between sharing beauty and sharing something that's not so so beautiful or interesting, but important and necessary to preserve the seas. Being also working as a spy. I did a TED Talk, a TED Global, telling how it was to be a spy in the Faroe Islands. My job was to interfere in the whaling, what's they call the grinding. So yeah, after working for different organizations, living literally 7 years at sea, I decided to create with 2 colleagues my own movement, which is called Women's League for the Ocean, which I'm very proud of. And I'm very happy also to say Natalia is part of the team. She's one of the supportive for us. So it's very, very important to have this collective creation of amazing women from different backgrounds, scientists, artists, athletes, and we are together as a team, managing and creating content, bringing information and connection with the sea. So this is how I more or less started my career, my journey my goal, my call, whatever it's called, and my deep connection and with the sea, the oceans. It happened when I actually stepped on board and started this amazing journey of being 7 years at sea. In the beginning, I didn't know they would last for so long. I was just prepared to sail from the south of Brazil and go into the Amazon. And then I was there working for Greenpeace, documenting as a communicator this campaign to protect the Amazon, but sailing to there from the very south to the very north of the country. So from one job to the other, from one mission, I prefer to say, to the other, there were so many steps and moments and emotions from the Amazon to Antarctica in more than 80 countries. So it was basically impossible to don't feel completely impacted and changed my life deeply, because when you see the whole process on how things operate at sea, the relationship with time, the relationship with the people on board, and even yourself when you are isolated on board in a vessel. So I spent a lot of time looking at the ocean, and that helped me to value more, to respect more, considering the fact that all the air we breathe, it comes from the ocean. The medicine, most of the medicine and studies and everything that we see nowadays, it comes from the studies from the ocean. So it has a major impact in my life, and something that it can't be changed. Now it's for forever. So I'm very happy and pleased to be here. Very honored to nowadays have my own movement and embrace other professionals, other dedicated people from all over Brazil, and hopefully people from from different countries as well, to find this energy, this compromise to carry on with our work. And I'm very happy to contribute here with you today. Thank you.
Moderator, you need to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me now? Yeah, thank you. Barbara, was great to hear from you, and congratulations for your amazing experience. Next one, I would like now to hear from Richard and Judith Lang.
Hello.
Good morning. Good morning.
We're happy to be here. We're honored to be with such illustrious company.
Yes.
This is a wonderful thing for us.
So our journey began in 1999 when we had our first date on Kehoe Beach in the Point Reyes National Seashore, where we discovered that 3 years prior, we each had been picking up plastic and making artwork out of it.
So we started in 96. And Judith picked up a piece of plastic and I said, "Are you going to keep that?"
And then Richard picked up a piece of plastic and said, "Are you going to keep that?" And out of that serendipitous discovery, we have made a lifetime commitment to only one place. We go repeatedly to only 1,000 meters of one beach. Uh-oh, can we stop the phone?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you know? To this one beach where we pick up plastic and then we make artwork out of it. And we never imagined that picking up trash would become our life work. Oh, so sorry. Oh, good. Thank you. Can we just stop?
Yeah.
So sorry, everybody.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we've had a grand time picking up plastic, making art, and because what does the ocean do for us?
Yeah.
Well, as people that spend far too much time in front of a screen, for me, it's that open horizon. It's that being able to expand my vision out to the farthest distance. And that gives me a feeling of peace and deep connectedness to the whole planet.
True. I think the focus of our work is 1,000 meters of one beach, because the problem is so immense. To create a metric for understanding it, we've limited ourselves to this one place. and it has taken us all over the planet. This one little spot on the planet has taken us all over the planet, and we're very happy with what's happened because of that, and then very unhappy about what's happening in the ocean.
Oh, there's somebody there. Oh, geez. I have to go to the door. Hang on. Keep talking, Richard.
Okay.
Where are you speaking from?
Where are we speaking from? We're
Yeah.
in a tiny village called Forest Knolls in Northern California, and we're about 10-15 minutes from the national seashore.
Great. Well, I will ask now for Sebastian Copeland to speak for us.
Francisco.
I will be back to you later.
Hey guys, it's a real pleasure to be here with you all. I'm speaking to you from Munich, so we're truly international. I've studied. I specialized in glaciology. I was trained as a photographer on the side, but my background was in climatology and glaciology. And I've spent a lot of time traveling in the polar region. So after college, I sort of fell into doing photography because it was it was pleasurable and lucrative. But fairly rapidly, I realized that I wanted to use that as a tool to document endangered areas. And I had always dreamt of being a polar explorer, and after spending a lot of time in the mountains and doing all sorts of adventures in climbing and mountaineering, I sort of retooled my skills to specialize in polar travel about 25 years ago. And so I did a variety of different journeys. In the Arctic first, and then I enlisted. I spent 2 seasons aboard a scientific research icebreaker in the Antarctica waters, and studying the water column and a variety of different studies. And the bug that I got for the polar region ended up taking me further and harder into the heart of the ice, both in the Arctic Ocean and over Greenland, and back to Antarctica on a variety of different occasions. And because I have a bit of an adrenaline sort of addiction in some respects, I guess, I started to push the boundaries of my personal travel, and I crossed the Arctic Ocean on ski during the winter, and I did a crossing of Greenland from south to north, 2,300 kilometers across Greenland, and then I went back to Antarctica and did a more than 4,000 kilometer crossing of Antarctica, which was the first east to west transcontinental crossing via 2 poles, and this was unassisted and unsupported. So I'm a lifelong waterman, so the ocean and the ice to me are obviously kindred spirits in many ways, and there's an interconnection between the two, particularly in the northern region. But in the southern region, over the course of the last decade, we've come to be even more connected to the ice via the melting of the West Antarctic region, and how that's impacting both the marine ecosystem down there, and of course in the northern part, very much so as well, given the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation and its impact on biodiversity, plankton life, and all types of phytoplanktons that are affected by the change in temperature and salinity and all these different things. So I've spent 15 years on a board of directors of President Gorbachev's environmental organization called the Green Cross International, and I was based in the US at the time, so I did a lot of advocacy on climate change from that perspective. And you know, I was raised sailing, and then I lived in Southern California for 38 years of my life. I'm British initially, but my heart is in California. So even while I'm in Munich, I'm seeing Richard and Judith now, and envious of being in NorCal, as I'm assuming that's where you are, right? In NorCal, yeah. Amazing, amazing ocean there, the Pacific. It's really got my heart. Spent a lot of time surfing the waves there. So, yeah, I mean, the ocean, as we all understand, is the base of the food chain. It's one of the greatest distributors of oxygen and a carbon sink as well, of course. And beyond that, it's vastly overfished. Its global fisheries are super stressed. I mean, 30% overfished, 80% stressed, and by the same token, by the mid-century, we'll have more plastics in the ocean than fish. So this should all give us a lot of room for concern. But with that, I'm going to give it back to you, Mauro, and be happy to engage in whatever discussion here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sebastian. And we'll be back discussing a little bit more some issues that all of you have raised here. But now I'd like to hear from Captain Charles Moore, please.
Yeah, so hello, everyone. And I'm in Southern California, and I'm also a veteran of Northern California in the 60s. I started a commune in Berkeley in 1968 and was part of the street riots there. And I've been in radical activist ever since. And we're now experiencing another time in history in which the system itself is under attack as a whole. And what I've experienced as developing the plastic pollution response is that our movement has been fragile. You can see how the coronavirus has upended all the progress we've made in reducing plastic consumption. What we're focused on as our group Algalita is how to make this movement more resilient and attack really the root causes of the problem. Because if we just go after the low-hanging fruit like plastic bags and styrofoam and plastic pellets, we're not attacking the causes of our environmental collapse. You know, I mean, knowledge of what is wrong with our production and use of petroleum and plastics is not able to drive the revolutionary changes needed to the technical apparatus that pollutes the planet and fuels the world's peaking economic system. We have to change from an unlimited growth in production and use paradigm to a steady state system with unlimited development within it. Like it or not, what's animating these young people is the demand for redistribution of wealth. And we're seeing that now in the Black Lives Matter movement. All the money's been going to the police departments, and and that's to suppress the demand of the poor for a seat at the table. So now, as a moderator, I want to just say a little bit about Newcastle. You may have heard the statement, bringing coals to Newcastle. Well, Newcastle was a coal production area in Britain. And now it's been displaced by another Newcastle in Australia, which is a coal producing port. And when I sampled with the University of Sydney in my research vessel, which was built in Hobart and sailed through Sydney and studied the bottom of the sediments there off of Newcastle, it was dead. There was no life visible in the samples we pulled off the bottom of that bay, because that area off Newcastle is the largest coal port in the world now. And they have boats sitting off there loading coal as a petroleum product. Well, we're dealing with the effects of peaking petroleum economy. Petroleum is a one-time deal. It's laid down in prehistoric times. It was brought to the surface and it saved the whales. We have to give it credit for that. We would have made every whale extinct on the planet for its oil if we hadn't found an alternative source. But it's long outlived that positive and is now driving the negatives that we all experience, whether it's climate change or plastic pollution or many types of disease that are caused by petroleum products, things that are derived from petroleum that are very useful for industry, but are creating a world in which this generation will have a shorter lifespan than the preceding generation for the first time in many generations. So the system has run its course. It can no longer provide the benefits for which it was created. And we need a completely different system, not based on unlimited growth, because the unlimited growth is why we have plastic pollution. The company that grows the fastest is able to do so because it has the greatest externalities. It allows the most pollution. You make more profit when you don't take care of your mess. If you can create a mess while making profit and not have to pay for its cleanup, you're going to be in a much better position with regards to your stock value than another company that's green and wants to be zero waste and wants to obtain the environmental value that we all cherish. So this movement that we've started, this plastic fight against plastic pollution that Proyecto ROUTE is involved in with Judith and Selby Lang with their art, have been instrumental in raising the awareness about, has become extremely fragile because the progress that we've made has now been obliterated by a worldwide pandemic. So we need to attack the root causes if we're going to have a sustained movement. And that movement has to focus on the switch from petroleum to other forms of energy. It has to also focus on redistribution of wealth and the steady state economy. We can have unlimited development and creativity within a steady state economy. It's not as if we don't want innovators to innovate, if we don't want kids to come up with great ideas for solving plastic pollution. But we got to be very careful about charlatans like the Ocean Cleanup Project, Boy and Slat, which you don't hear anything about now, but was where all the money went to clean up the ocean. When we would go to funders and say, can you help us with our education programs? Can you help us with our scientific understanding of this problem? They'd say, oh, we've got it taken care of. We're funding the ocean cleanup with Boy and Slat. We're sending millions of dollars so he can put a plastic sewage pipe out in the ocean that weighs about a ton for every 5 feet and made out of polyethylene, and was the fantasy was that this was going to trap all the plastic in the garbage patch and they would get rid of it. It totally broke. It was a total sham. Everyone knew it was a bad idea, but he sucked all the money out of the movement for these low-hanging fruit solutions, which are basically cleanup. So now we're raising awareness with cleanup. There's nothing wrong with cleanup. Every bit you take and keep out of the ocean is a bit that's not going to pollute the ocean. But all these beaches now that used to be pristine, that didn't have the big stuff washing up, now have the microplastics washing up because all these big things break down into microplastics. So the entire ocean is populated with plastic. There's no ice core in the Arctic or the Antarctic that's going to be taken that will show prehistoric levels of plastic pollution. There were no synthetic polymers in history. This is a new phenomenon, and we have no idea what the consequences are. My last article was Invasion of the Biosphere by Synthetic Polymers, what our current knowledge may mean for our future. And what's happened is, since this stuff's been breaking down and since all our clothing fabrics have been sloughing off and going into the jet stream and now ruined the water cycle. We used to have pure water by evaporation and precipitation. Now precipitation is precipitating plastic particles in our water. So our latest initiative is to determine how much plastic is in our drinking water in cooperation with 33 3 other laboratories, we started the Moore Institute for Plastic Pollution Research to determine the amount of plastic in our drinking water, because the state of California has put some money aside to regulate plastics in drinking water. But it's not just in our drinking water, it's in our food, it's in every niche in the ocean, which has already been shown. So it's invaded the entire biosphere. It's also in outer space, outside the biosphere, and causes problems with spaceships launching, having to divert their course in order to avoid trash in outer space. So this is a peaking civilization that is causing more harm than good. And so our movement needs to attack it as a whole. We can't simply say, we're going to clean up this, we're going to fix that. Yes, these are things that spur activism. We can organize around, we can do this. We need a giant political force. We need a critical mass politically in order to make change. But that mass is occurring now for the first time since the 1960s. It's in Munich. You've had protests, Black Lives Matter. It's throughout the United States and throughout the world. So we can't just latch onto these fragile successes that can be reversed with a COVID virus. We need to have the struggle elevate to a new level, which is to take on the system that produced these problems as a whole. And I'm sure all of us want to do that, and we're just struggling to figure out how. So political organizing is the key. And all the movements that you're building, you need to have that one aspect that, yes, we're attacking this individual problem, but our goal is to attack the system as a whole that produced this problem.
Oh, thank you very much, Richard. And we heard all of your talks, and a lot of problems came out, like ecosystems have been destroyed. We have climate change going on. We have all this plastic pollution, and we have this social and economic problem. I have been hearing that some governments, especially in Europe, they want to bring a new normal, and they say it has to be sustainable. We probably, all of us have heard about the Green New Deal, and I have 2 points to raise here. One of them is about sustainability. We have this idea of sustainability that came, especially became notorious in 1992 in Rio. And since then, we are trying to find a sustainable world, and this it looks like it did not work well. So there are a lot of critics of this idea of sustainability, especially I have a friend, a colleague in Germany, Dr. Gert Winter, who I have worked for a little while, and he says, well, one of the great problems is that we put the environment, economics, and social issues in the same level, like these 3 pillars. When you discuss like the code to fish in Europe with the politicians, the scientists come with one data. The businessmen come with another data and say, well, we built this much of our fleet is this big. We have hired a lot of people, and the scientists say, well, you can catch only this. And then the government has the decision, and the government tries to balance the economic, the social, and the environmental aspects. And of course, and we can see it by your sayings, that environment is losing. And this guy, he has an article who is that's called One Fundament and Two Pillars. So all we plan when we talk about sustainability has to be based on the capacity of resiliency of our ecosystems.
Right.
And my question is, the world is restart economically now, and people are saying that there will be this new Green Deal, and the society has to be sustainable from now on. How do you think this new, if there will be, the question is, do you think the society is already prepared for this new world that we will live? And how do you think this new Green Deal will affect the ocean management and the ocean's ecosystems? I will start, I'll ask to start with Barbara again, and we do the same sequence we did. And after that, if you guys want to debate with one another, please do it.
All right, so we are facing all this challenge, looking at the future, not understanding very well what's going to happen. It's very difficult to have the right answer for these two questions because we don't have any certain decisions yet for all economies and all nations, what's going to happen in the future. But we are facing now, the humanity is facing now the 21st century, the challenge to meet the needs with all the new means that we are going to get related on the planet, of the planet. So you talk about the economy, and the first thing that came to my mind was the donut economy from Kate Warworth. And Amsterdam, it's in Holland itself, but Amsterdam is going to be the first experiment of the donut economy, which is pretty much focused on the life essentials and the food care and the needs of looking at the environment in the most correct way, let's say, and looking for the economy, the climate, the relationship we're going to have with the finances from now on. It's pretty hard to understand what kind of directions we're going to take, but definitely people are feeling the effects and looking at everything that's happening around the globe in terms of import, export, what's not possible to happen anymore, and what kind of changes we are going to see in this as the compass for human progress for this century during this scene of pandemic and everything. So yeah, I guess it's a pretty interesting plan, the donut of planetary boundaries, but I'm very skeptical when I think about the whole world. I'm particularly from Brazil, which is a country with a lot of issues, social issues, economical issues, and other major issues, especially now. But I think it's one of the environmental plans that could be perhaps used as an experiment, understanding we should definitely looking at the environment, going first to economy, going in parallel of the economy, also looking at health people as well in many different ways, many different levels. So yeah, and regarding the effects on the oceans, I guess it will affect especially the fishing industry, and how this is going to be, what kind of processes are going to pass through in order to keep this industry or change the way it is going to be distributed. I believe people are going to look more locally, and it's already happening, right? Lots of things. I'm in London right now, and I see clearly in the supermarkets, there are things that you don't see it anymore. People are talking more about supporting locally and do things more locally, mainly because we don't have any option, but also when you look at the future, what is the most sustainable and reasonable way to live? So when I think about community, when I think about the ways we look at the ocean and the relationship that's going to be redesigned from now on, I think it's going to change. I don't know in which direction it's gonna take some time, I guess. Like every economy, we're not going to see like immediate impact, I think. in terms of change, in terms of something that we hope to see as people who care for the environment and the ocean. I can definitely see from simple examples during this pandemic experience that people are rethinking their habits. But hopefully, after the lockdown is over, we're going to see major actions from the nations, the governments, but also in communities and individuals.
Great. Barbara, I don't think you told us where are you speaking from?
I'm speaking from London right now. I used to live in Amsterdam, actually, but I got locked here in London. So it's been 3 months. I arrived here, and I'm looking forward to get some news from the next measures and see if I'm going to be able to travel back home, whatever home is going to be from now on.
All right. Yeah. Please, Judith and Richard, if you want to comment about the questions.
The plastic industry has not wasted a moment on this pandemic, making us believe that plastic is going to save us by covering everything over and it will protect us. So that's incredibly distressing to watch this unfold before our very eyes. Producer responsibility for the full life cycle of plastic is something that we believe is exceedingly important. That if you make it, you take care of it all the way through its recycle, its disposal.
And 2 pillars of our work together is, number one, it's, as I described, it's taking on just what you can touch. So our 1,000 yards of one beach is what we can touch and be responsible for that. The second pillar is you better have fun doing what you're doing. If you're not having fun, as David Brower said, you're just going to depress yourself. So we've made a point of, we're artists, we're in the pleasure business. So we've made a point of having as much fun as we possibly can. And strange as it sounds, we think fun is going to save the planet.
Well, we hope that that will also inspire others to get out there and do their little part, be it caretaking the sidewalk in front of where they live or the watershed close nearby. I also want to tip a hat to Charles Moore, who has been a guiding light to us from the very beginning, when the news of the North Pacific Gyre, this area, some first people said it was the size of Texas, and then size of Brazil. It kept getting bigger and bigger. And he was really the person that helped to illuminate this problem and has really, as I say, been a guiding force in our plastic practice.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Sebastian?
I love that, Richard, having fun doing it. It's a lofty goal, ambitious, but it's certainly one to look up towards. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that one of the systemic problems that we've been having is this segmentation of ecology and economy. There are 3 pillars of change, and they're very much intertwined. I often say that, you have business leaders and stakeholders, you have politicians, and then you have, popular opinion that's driven by the media. And you can only move as fast as the slowest one. And so what we're seeing is I think encouraging progress, I guess we could call it that, and certainly 2019 figures a little bit in the way that, let's say, 2006 figured after Katrina and after the Inconvenient Truth and after this sort of wave of popular awareness. But we also see that any major challenge, traditionally economic challenges, whether it be the crash of 2008, I guess the jury's out on COVID, because to some extent there's an argument to be made that, that climate and a pandemic are bedfellows to some extent. I mean, if nature is on our doorstep, we shouldn't be too surprised if it comes in knocking. And to some extent, the pandemic is has that kind of relationship to climate. But I think that we can all agree that, in spite of Fridays for the Futures and Extinction Rebellion and Greta Thunberg's and everyone, which is really amazing, and 2019 was a banner year. We can all agree on that, and it was super encouraging. But if it's not a pandemic, there's going to be something else that comes and once again knocks, this kind of upswing drive off its tracks, and then we have to constantly rebuild again. So I think it's important to understand that, as Charles mentioned earlier, and I very much concur. This is a multi-pronged systemic problem, which involves pyramid-shaped economic models, which involves the drive of special interest to control policy, which involves the media and the corruption of our news stream and understanding of what is real. And this is only made worse by this amplification of social media, where more and more we're finding it quite difficult to see what is believable or not. So, I'm laying out, of course, the problem. I mean, my big thing over the last 15 years has been to sort of repeat this mantra of desegmenting ecology and economy. And what I'm seeing is that it's getting harder and harder to do it and not easier. So our socioeconomic systems are being stressed really, and to a virtual breaking point. And if anything has been proven by these recent wave of protests and this amazing movement of people that finally has gotten to the street, because let's face it, it's been 3 years in the making. Many of us who have been activists for a long time and in the front lines of various battles have been wondering what happened to that 60s generation, with a Donald Trump or Bolsonaro, and the list goes on, from Orban to Salvini to to what's happening in Britain as well. Where was that movement? And now finally it took George Floyd and this tragic death to get people to the street. But I'm fairly certain we can all agree that this was only the drop that that broke the vase. Basically, it's not just this tragic death. It's social injustice. It's of course systemic racism and this institutionalized pressing for special interest over the good. I mean, I'm blown away by where the stock market is at the moment in the US, considering that we still have, I mean, in spite of bringing back 2.5 million employment, there's still 38 million people unemployed, and the stock is almost where it was just pre-COVID. And if anything says that this is the complete disconnect between the people and the financial institution, and if you can't see that, then I don't know what it's going to take. But we're really seeing this breaking point. So middle class being shrunk and pressed down to the lower class, pyramid-shaped economic model getting pointier and pointier, with Bezos, about to be a trillionaire in 2016. I mean 2026, that is. And so this long sort of expose, which seems to take us away a little bit from the ocean, is actually only a place to say, like, we have to look at sociopolitics in order to solve environmental and ecological issues. We cannot just solve these problems by sheer popular will. It needs to be regulated. It needs to be driven by policy. It needs a powerful come to Jesus moment that admittedly is going to be driven by the people. But I've been projecting the breakdown of constitutional democracies over the next, the course of the next century. I personally don't believe that constitutional democracies have a future in the 21st century. And much of it has to do with the environment. I've coined a term, which was the ecological dictatorship. There are problems that simply are being driven to not facilitate a constitutional decision, a democratic decision, that is, because they're becoming, harder and harder to manage. And so we have a certain choice that's presented to us right now, is that we can voluntarily move towards transforming our policies, or we're going to be driven more and more towards a bureaucratic autocracy in the model of China, which, we can say everything we want against China in terms of its suppression of human rights, of individual rights and freedoms of expressions and whatnot. But I think it doesn't take a crystal ball to see that they will resolve environmental crises faster than we will do them in constitutional democracies. And that is the greatest fear that I've been having, is this kind of connection between the loss of freedoms driven by the breakdown of ecology. And so, your question had to do with the ocean, but I'm looking at this really as a sort of systemic philosophical discussion, because I don't think you can break one without addressing the other.
Yeah, I've heard about this idea of the democracies will not be able to solve the environmental crisis, and I think was James Lovelock that brought this. Yeah. And but the problem is, like, if it's in the hands of Bolsonaro's and Trump's, and we are in a really bad hands. Charles, please.
So sustainability is a conservative goal. Sustaining the status quo is not the solution. The world that we want to sustain is more and other than the status quo. So the idea that somehow we can juggle the system so that it goes on is really a problematic conception. And yet that's what everyone has been focused on. how to make it work, how to make the system work when it's broken. But I was very interested in Sebastian's concept of ecological dictatorship. And I've been working on a different concept, but one in which we think about the new revolutionaries as not being human. The idea is that all revolutions in the past have been put down, whether it's the Arab Spring or the Bolshevik Revolution. They've been defeated, but the idea was that there was a class of people that, by their very lives, were unable to be part of the system that would demand a new system. But those people have always been bought off or defeated. They've either been co-opted or they've been brutally defeated. So now there's a new player in the game, and it's nature herself. And the idea that somehow male domination, like a la Bolsonaro and Trump, can defeat nature and her hurricanes and her floods and her droughts is, of course, a total fantasy. Trump actually suggested nuking a forming hurricane to get rid of it. That was his answer to a hurricane bearing down on the United States, was to nuke it. So now we have this new force in political theory that was never part of the theory of political change before, and that is nature herself. She cannot be co-opted. She can't be bought off. She can't be militaristically challenged. She can only be accommodated. And to accommodate nature's demands will require a radically new system. So who will be the agents of change that will create that system? That's the question. There's plenty of theoretical ways to deal with our current situation, but we have to build that movement that can create a rapprochement with the force that is destroying our civilization, which is nature herself. So I think that's the challenge for us, is to create that movement that will respond to the new proletariat, I call it, which is nature herself.
Okay. Well, in this part of our panel now, I would like, please, if any of you wants to maybe continue this subject, or maybe ask someone a question, someone in the panel a question, please feel free.
Well, I think it's very important to remember that we live in a big world, 7 billion people, right? With completely different realities. When we think about the reality in the US, the reality in Australia, the reality in Brazil, it's completely different. And when I think in a model like the donut economy I was talking about before, it's something that I wanted to believe. It's something that I hope the world is going to incorporate. But it's very hard to believe that it's going to be something that's happening so fast, and then with considering the urge that the world is living right now. So I see the need of a new economic model, that's for sure. I worry on how it's going to be implemented in the new reality that we're going to live. We're already living, but we're going to see that in a more consistent way from now on. And I really like what Sebastian said about, I see people, standing and doing things and being more active, let's say, regarding to the rights in many different levels. So I believe the only way out, the only solution is people actually incorporate what we believe, and be able to spread that message as much as we can with our family, with our businesses, with our friends. And I only believe in the collective power from my very beginning on activism, because my work as a filmmaker and photographer goes very, very close to all this need or spread something transformative for people's life. So when we talk about the ocean, it's very interesting to remember, right? It doesn't matter where we're living around the globe. We depend on the ocean to survive. So the big challenge, I think, it's how to communicate with people in a very close way. It doesn't matter where it comes from. And it's a big challenge, right? Because again, in Brazil, we have all these social issues happening. People dying because they don't have anything to eat during this terrible problem with the pandemic. So it's way more than just implement a new economical system. It's also rethink on how we are going to deal, like in every single country, with this problematic economical and social environmental situation. And again, it's what it connects with what Sebastian says, like everything, it's united, right? We can't talk about nature without considering humans. We depend on this new model of rethinking life, and also the education. And since we have that message spread and people being re-educated, let's say, on how we're going to see the world and how we're going to incorporate this new way of seeing the world. So this is the big challenge we're going to embrace, and finding ways to communicate from all different directions, for all different realities, hoping that we're going to see a better change, a major change, and a huge impact. So I do believe that technology is going to to be big part of it, but mostly from our actions every day on the routine, and how we're going to decide how we're going to incorporate that message on the daily basis.
Barbara is talking about communication, and Richard said that they work with art and maybe fun would save the world. And many of you are communicators, and communication in many ways are really connected to art. And one movement that has been growing in Brazil is that defending artists during this pandemic, because this new government in Brazil, that they are taking money from culture, they are trying to intervene in culture, in arts and in plays and cinema and everything. But as people are at home now, they watch movies, they listening to music, and entertainment has been playing a big role in the wealth, in the healthy health of people now. So if there was no art, if there was no entertainment, people would be going crazy. And I'll tell you a personal experience related to art. We were trying to create a municipal park, a local park on a beach in the north of the island of Santa Catarina in Florianópolis, Brazil. And we tried many ways. When the group working with art and culture came to the scene, they got to integrate many people and make the communication reach everyone, even the politics. And someone in the chat here in the YouTube said, "You guys are talking too much about separation. Why don't we talk about integration?" And I think now is the way, that is a time that we can drive our conversation for solutions. And I bring here the idea: is art in many ways the path for integrating all societies and cultures? And then we spread the message that living systems are essential for our life and our health.
As artists, we're deeply concerned about the power of images and how they can affect change. In 1968, there was probably the most influential environmental photograph ever taken, which was Moonrise. It's an image of the Earth taken from the Apollo spacecraft. About 2 months later, there was the Santa Barbara oil spill, and the airwaves were filled with oil-drenched birds. It was these two images that really catalyzed the environmental movement, and out of that came the first Earth Day, and here in the States, an incredible cascade of environmental legislation. So my question is, what are the images that we can create and use today that will help to catalyze our time and this movement?
I might take that, since I'm also a photographer, and it's been very interesting for me, because I have I've got two sides. I've got a scientific side and I've got an artistic side, and the three pillars of my personal house is also adventure. So I've got adventure and advocacy and photography, and somehow they work in confluence to communicate. I think art has a great function, and I appreciate what you're saying, Judith, and Mauro, for bringing this up, because for my personal brand of my work, I try to communicate that we won't say what we don't love, right? So we we need to fall in love with our world, with our nature, with our planet, in order to want to preserve it. And I'll go even further, that I think, while Charles was mentioning earlier that nature now is has entered the fray of the sort of the apex creatures, or at least within this sort of conflictual relationship that we've had. But there's another dominant species, which is the algorithmic species, which is also entering our sort of collective societies and are going to completely restructure the nature of what it means to be a human in society, divorcing wealth accumulation from labor, because within this century 70% of labor from humans will be obsolete. So at this point the question becomes, what is the relevance of humanity within a system that is primarily driven by algorithmic intelligence? And I think that art will play a tremendous role in that, because if there's one thing that makes us inherently humans, it would be empathy. And empathy exists within the natural world, of course, within a measure of our understanding. But generally speaking, interspecies empathetical behavior is something that is inherently human. Not to say that the tiger can't care for the little piglet, or that the cat cannot sort of have a moment of closeness with a little mouse. But generally speaking, we can all agree that a tiger is going to eat the piglet, and typically a cat's going to eat the mouse. And in spite of the fact that other species also communicate, trees, of course, we've learned communicate and whatnot, but the interspecies empathy, and that of course is inclusive of nature, is something that is inherently human. And what is art if not the marriage of the intellect with the emotion? And I think in order to solve these crises that we see in terms of the environmental challenges that we have, art is without a doubt is a vehicle that is enabling us to be grounded in seeing the interconnectivity of all things. The big question is, will that be enough, and will it come in time? I think, that not that I want to continue holding on to the negative. I recognize the value of positivism in these discussions, but this is without any question, 2020 will, almost the seminal moment of COVID could not have been more perfectly timed to have that moment of confluence between socioeconomic, sociopolitical, come geopolitical, and technological and environmental systems all sort of, moving into this one direction, which is, it's a stress point that is intense. And if we measure this stress point over the next decade, God knows what's going to happen unless we're smart, from, sociopolitics, of course, a big one, but how that destabilizes geopolitics, how these geopolitics engage our environmental policy. We're seeing even just, I was in Brazil for the fires in last August, and I came down and I was in Brazil while, Macron was, and not just Macron, Germany and Scandinavia, Norway took out their sovereign fund to, support Amazonian effort because they did not trust the Bolsonaro government. And everything got to be very acrimonious. And so the question that if you project this into the future, at which time will it be realistic to think that an environmental issue can become a geopolitical destabilizer? If existentially we're all threatened by the loss of the rainforest, is the next, logical action not to say, hey, wait, you are threatening the globe, and if your action, so these are potentially very, very challenging scenarios. But I always try to bring it back now, the positive message. Empathy is the one thing that connects us all and connects us to the environment. So art is one of those conduits So, you know, promoting that. And I'm not sure where I was going with this entire thing other than a stream of consciousness, but I just wanted to echo a little bit of what Judith was saying, what Mauro brought up, which is, you know, art in the future in an algorithmic driven society will play a critical role, just as sports will, and writing poetry. And, you know, I mean, listen, if the government are going to pay us a universal basic income to write poetry, play sports, and have sex, I think that at least the writing poetry section of it should be at the service of the environment.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I will pass the word for Charles. But first, I would like to comment a little bit, because you put like art and also sport, that could be a good vehicle for that. And in the beginning, while introducing myself, I told that we are trying in Brazil to establish a national program, surfing reserves. And there is a World Surfing Reserves program, and Brazil has one World Surfing Reserve. In this area, which is where the World Surfing Reserve is, they have a problem with the river there, and also with the sewage. The community tried to get together to find a good project to treat their sewage. The initiative of the Surfing Reserve was able to connect politicians, many government bodies, entrepreneurs of the area, and also many surfers came to the 3 meetings they did. So the sport of surfing, for instance, and we are talking about the ocean, and we came with the idea, I mean, scientists, especially from an NGO in California that holds this program of World Surfing Reserve, they established the idea of surfing ecosystem. And in this surfing ecosystem of this area, they could, through the sport, promote the connection of everyone in the society. And now they came with the project to treat the sewage that the society wants. So I agree with you, and I think sport is a great vehicle for unite people. And I understood your concern that when you are talking about the art, but how we can get to policy, you know, to exchange policy. And I think you are right, like art, sport, poetry, which is art too, can help mobilize people in a good way, you know, with a good purpose. But Charlie, please. Your mood.
Surfing is a great example of a sport that doesn't have to be competitive. Duke Kahanamoku said, the best surfer is the one that's having the most fun. And that, of course, will make Judith and Richard happy to know. The dialectical opposite of empathy is competition. And got a gift of water. So we have to be very careful about encouraging the kind of sports that injure people, like boxing and football, especially American gridiron football. The idea is not to beat the other guy down. This is what folks, why the military recruits great football players. The idea is to defeat the enemy and crush them, totally humiliate them. This vision of success, which drives the growth economy, is our enemy. That's what we're fighting against. So surfing is a great way to show how you can work hard, You can get out there, you can paddle hard, you can struggle against the ocean, which is a natural obstacle. But once you're on that wave, you experience complete freedom. The surfer has the ability to move that board and to be on that wave in such a way that he is exhilarated by that feeling of freedom. He experiences a great moment of having a force propelling him in a way that he can move with it in such a way that he has a very elated sense of, a heightened sense of awareness and a unity with the natural environment. So surfing is a very great sport to use as an example. I know back in the 60s, I sent, put some money behind a guy who won the Jewish decathlon to go to the Philippines and promote non-competitive sports. It didn't really work out very well, but that has been a concept since the 60s of non-competitive sport. Now, let's talk about great works of art. Yeah, in any of their many forms, whether it's poetry, plays, new movies, or overs to art, they can provide the break that is impossible for us to imagine from within this totalitarian society. We're having struggling now. What's it going to look like? What's our movement going to look like? What's it going to be like? The absolute otherness of great works of art lies in their ability to create consciousness of the horrors of the status quo, yet allow us to imagine another world where the unfreedom of today is canceled and left behind. So this is part of our great refusal to accept the cynical, antiquated pronouncements by the purveyors of repression that a human and humane utopia is impossible. My colleague Sebastian has suggested that the jobless future is going to be problematic, and it certainly is. One of the candidates for president in the United States talked about our jobless future, and we need to be very careful about how we go about dealing with the fact that we're now automated and that toil is being eliminated. Toil is the basis for creation of utopia. That if we can eliminate toil, then we can have that utopia. That utopia means no place, but now it can be this place, the place that we live on, our Mother Earth and our Mother Ocean, they give us the basis now because of automation and what Sebastian has called algorithmic civilization. That gives us the basis for creating utopia now. And we have to push back against all those that say that's not possible, that we can't live lives of freedom like we feel when we're surfing on a perfect wave. We have that feeling of freedom and perfection. That is the total unity of Mother Ocean and the surfer, that humanity and the surfer with the mother that we all share. That is now possible for the world itself. And I know that Barbara has traveled a lot, and so she's very suspicious of universal solutions for problems that are so specific to different cultures and different areas and different ecologies and environments. And I can understand that suspicion. Nevertheless, we are now all actually the same in a certain way. And that is our use of social media. That drives a certain sameness, and it also drives a certain conformity. So we have to be very leery of the conformity, because once you step outside the social accepted norm, you're suppressed. Any time a Black person uses the phrase white people, that's censored by Facebook as hate speech. That's not right. And so we're going to be dealing with the fact that we're all connected, but that we can't really say the things that we need to say and do the things that we need to do to make this utopia on Earth a reality. So just remember, it's just around the corner. We have the technological capability. We have this algorithmic civilization that can produce. So the key, I think, that we can all get behind is what we call regional reliance. We need to create a regional reliance inventory. Small factories can be worked. We need a local stock market. Trex Profit at the university started by Benjamin Franklin and Marshall, where I spoke after publishing my book, Plastic Ocean. He took me into his office and told me about his effort to create local stock markets around the world, where if a kid has a really great idea, people can invest in that and have local production. So what we need is to rely on our region. We need regional reliance. We need to take an inventory of all the things that we can make for ourselves in our own local region, all the things that we have to bring from outside, and make a fraction out of it, with the stuff that we do in our own region as the numerator and the stuff that we have to bring in as the denominator. And our goal is to increase that number so that we have more and more things that we need made locally and less things that we need to import, and that we, for those things we do need to import, we trade things that we make locally. So I get behind the regional reliance inventory concept, and over to you.
Charles, are you a surfer? You are mute. You are mute. Charles, you are mute. Mute.
I've been a surfer for over 60 years. I was taught by Rabbit Kakai in Oahu, a famous surfer, and I've surfed killers at Toto Santos, triple overhead, and I've been to Nazare, but I watched the people out there being towed out, and I didn't see one guy catch a wave. They're so paranoid of those waves, they don't even want to catch them. So I think surfing's for fun. It's not.
Oh, they're catching them.
The biggest wave.
They're catching them. I mean, there's that Nazare is a solid spot. I mean, we got a new rising star in Kai Lenny. I mean, he's already a star, but he's a kid, and he was just surfing there. And there's a great German surfer as well, Sebastian.
Oh, I know they're catching the waves. What I'm saying is, that's an enormous wave, a tremendously powerful wave. And if that's fun for you, go for it. But the guy who is the most famous surfer over there has so many broken bones that he's basically just a patchwork quilt of screws and nuts and bolts. So I have my questions about, conquering nature, and that drive can be part of surfing if we're not careful.
Hey, you were already a hero, but now that you say that you surf Toto Santos, it gets you into even a greater category.
Next level.
I had a bamboo board that I really loved. It was really sustainable, to use that term, product of a bamboo, and I surfed, and the wave tore the board away from me and took it somewhere I could never find the board. I searched all day to find that board. I love that board. I looked in all the crevices on the shore. I drove the boat around the outside of the island. I paddled all around. I could never find that board. It was crazy. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I felt that you were a surfer because you described it so well, and people have this saying that only a surfer knows the feeling. And I saw that you got the feeling. But you also talk about utopia, and we were talking about poetry, and I remember a piece of Eduardo Galeano, and he says the utopia is in the horizon, and we walk 2 steps towards it, it goes away 2 steps. We walk 10 steps towards it, it goes away 10 steps. But the good thing about it, that it makes us to move. So utopia makes us to move, and that's what's happening around the world now. Like Sebastian have commented, people are moving right now. People are moving. People are on the streets.
That's right.
Some governments are trying to move, but the thing is, and we are going to the last. About 15 minutes of our panel, and which way should we move? And I think we have talked about a little bit about this, but I started this panel talking about Capra, and he brings this idea that was born in the 20s of the systemic thinking, and showing that the world does not work as a machine, but as a living system. And it brings also the idea of the Gaia theory. So we are all interconnected. And I was watching the Turning Point of his 2 days ago. That's why I have this, I bring this to this conversation. And in this movie, there was a poetry, a lady that is a scientist, and a guy that who was a candidate for as a president of the United States. And the scientists brought all this idea of the systemic thinking, and the politicians said, okay, but how do we turn all these ideas into policy? And to go towards the end of our panel, I'd like to ask you, which kind of policy development are you guys involved? And what kind of policy for conservation of the ocean do we need in our complex and systemic and interconnected and interdependent world?
The ocean is the great conveyor. It connects us all. And Charles, I think we have that piece of your surfboard in our collection. So come on over.
Really, it's a woven bamboo. Is that a woven bamboo fabric?
Yeah, everything comes to Kehoe Beach. We've got
Oh my
bottles,
goodness.
we've got single-use bottles from all over the Pacific Rim.
We have a piece of the those racing boats that were racing in the bay.
For the Americans.
The Oracle boat that crashed.
Oh
We have
yeah.
a piece of that in our collection. But the thing that
But how are you going to make policy out of that?
well, here's the thing. In the 60s, we really struggled for our vision. And what we came to, my little circle of friends and people, is we came to is living your life, and live your life as though we fought the revolution and won.
Yeah, I can get behind that. The idea that we're going to be the change that we want to see. Now, I do that at my home farm. I'm a certified producer. I have the county agricultural commissioner come to my home and tell me that the crops that I have can be sold to the public. So every Saturday and Sunday from 10 until 4, I put out a table. I put all the vegetables and fruits that I have. I've been doing it since 1974. So I have 46 years of organic farming around my home. Get a lot of traffic here because it's in a marina. I have the boat across the street. And I can create that world where during the COVID, and you were talking about being happy campers during the COVID. During the COVID, it was like gave me all the time to do the planting I wanted to do, to start the seeds I wanted to start, to do the pruning and get organized, clean out the garage, all these things that you never had time for. It's like we're so busy, we're living 24/7 on the clock because now the workday has no end. We're constantly working. So the idea that then we had some time, we had a little time to see ourselves. And I think that's part of this movement that's created. People were thrown back on themselves. They had no other place to go but within. And to create that human being that you want for your own self, that was a big challenge during the COVID. And to be that human being that is joyous in creating the new society is part of the Make It Fun movement, which Algalita has a purveyor. Every Friday he does a rap. It's Michael Doshi. And he has created the Make It Fun movement around plastic pollution. And you can see his raps on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. But he always concludes any of his expositions by be sure to make it fun. And so I gave a presentation in Spain to a group of solid waste managers. And I told them that you had to make it fun. And why do you have to make it fun? Because you can't make it big unless you make it fun. We need a huge movement, and people won't join it unless it's fun. So that movement that we're creating with whatever policies, they have to have this new radical concept around them, which is that they're fun, that they're joyous, that they have a wonderful, so that the seriousness of the protests has now morphed into a kind of a dance mode over in our neighborhood. And people are doing that. So if you can't make it fun, you can't make it big. And we need it to be huge.
Yeah, and being fun and inspirational as well, right? I believe in all forms of expression. And once we believe that we can use, talking about arts and sports and all other topics to inspire and transform, believing that we can connect people's emotion, and from that we help them to see the reality we're living and take action, I think it will help us to keep moving by our actions and by inspiring people. So I remember one time I was last year presenting one of my artistic performance called Sea Woman in Japan, in Tokyo. And it was a big challenge for me because for several years I was working in the anti-whale campaign, working for Greenpeace, and Sea Shepherd, being 2 years in Antarctica, going on these campaigns and documenting that. So I wanted to experiment from my other way of telling people how I feel, what's going on in the oceans, what is going with the marine life, and what kind of direction we should take. And being right there in Japan with all these people who are amazing, adorable, very interesting, and very artistic too, but they have their values very tough regarding to the oceans. And any criticism, it's taken in it could be taken a very different direction. So when I presented my work on Sea Women with all these body expressions and whale sounds and everything, and I saw people looking at me like, oh, what is this, you know? And at the end of the presentation, it was such a beautiful things with all these words in kanji and words from all over, different languages from all over. I see people's eyes like super impressed and emotional. So all forms of interaction artistically, from the sports, which I think it's amazing. It's like even football, it's like a ballet, right? It's art. When you surf a wave, I can't surf. I used to when I was a teenager, but I'm far from Charlie's experience. But I love it, you know, these feelings of butterflies on the stomach and just like letting your body and go with this movement. And it's such a beautiful feeling. So I guess we should be driven by this wave, that it can come from our hearts, from our souls. And also if you get a chance to connect that in order to regenerate the world and connect people, believing that it's possible, inspiring them. And yes, we are all one. We're all together in this fight, and only believing nature and believing that nature is part of human. It's part of the ocean. It's part of the forest as well. It doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter the color of your skin. But yes, I think definitely if we take action, and then we take action locally, globally, using the internet, using technology, or doing this at home, inspiring people, it's the only way out possible to find a more better reality for the planet. This home we call planet right now.
And the Gaia hypothesis that there is a soul to nature, you don't have to believe that in order to see that nature is acting as an angry human would act if it was abused in the way that we've abused her. So the abuse that our society levels on Mother Nature has created a reaction that is now scientifically documented. It's not as if you have to prove that we're the cause of her reaction. So whether or not you believe she has a soul, you can certainly see that she's acting in a way that can only be dealt with by a form of capitulation, because she is the greater force. So I think we have to make that clear as we organize, that we cannot win against Mother Nature.
It's true. Someone else?
So one of the great puzzles about artwork is it's really weird sometimes. What the hell is this thing I'm looking at? And you can't figure it out. And it turns out there's a lot of evidence that the weirdness of art is to create neuroplasticity. The same thing that happens to a stroke victim when they rewire their brains and have improvement is neuroplasticity. And that's what we're about, is what Judith and I are about, is to create new pathways for thinking about things. So when we do workshops with kids and we dump a pile of plastic, on the floor, they know exactly what to do with it. We don't have to give any instructions. They start organizing, they start creating color relationships, and it's the most fun you've ever had.
And when we go to the beach, we don't say, oh, we're going to go and clean the beach. We say, we're going to go and curate the beach, because we're going to go pick up the best, the brightest, and we're going to use it as art supplies. We don't need to go buy more. We've got plenty of things on the planet. Let's just use this incredible material and use it to create images that will inspire others.
And isn't it amazing to use our body, our voices, our art, our abilities to touch other people? This is the best thing that I think humans can do, right? Speak with the heart and having a solid way of expressing how we feel, how we connect. So yeah, I believe in human race, even if all these crazy things it's been happening around the globe. But it's very, very beautiful to see that we are capable to reverse the system, to find the strategies to catch people's heart and tell them, look, what's going on, and these are the ways that we can find together to get out of this situation we're living now in the most beautiful way.
Yeah, I like what you guys said, Charles and Judith, about having fun. You know, we could call it the humor race, and you know, if you don't have that spirit, then it's difficult to drive. You know, to drive a whole population behind.
Right.
And incidentally, if you say that everything washes out on your beach, Judith and Richard, then you might find a piece of my heart there, because any day that I'm not on the ocean, I feel that a little piece of my heart is breaking, and it's probably washing out on your shores. But all joke aside, you know, I think one of the other aspects, if you can't make a joke or if you can't create art, you still have curiosity. And I think that, you know, one of the critical components of being the change, as Charles was saying earlier, is to be curious. You know, there is so much information available out there. That's one of the great aspects of technology. There are some negative aspects as well. The days never end, as Chuck mentioned earlier, and but at least you can dive deep into all types of different informational, you know, research, and you can find, you know, what to eat sustainably, and that includes with the ocean. I'm an ambassador for the Marine Stewardship Council, and to find out what fish is sourced sustainably. It's an NGO, and you know, there's probably others out there, but this is an important aspect as well of understanding what your responsibility is to the ocean. And moving forward, you know, if we just are complacent, then we are the problem. If we're curious and searching for answers, then we're part of the solution.
Yes, we have only 3 minutes. We'll talk a little bit about the algorithm society that, and I was watching an interview with the guy who wrote *Sapiens*. Can't remember his name now. The guy from Israel, very well known nowadays.
Harari.
Say it. Say it again.
Yuval Harari.
It's
Yuval Harari.
Noah
Yeah,
Harari.
yeah.
Noah
And he-
Harari.
Harari, yeah. And he said in that interview, people asked him what was the role of meditation in his life. And he said, well, society during all the history have trying to find ways to know, people have tried to find ways to know themselves better, you know. But today we have something that we never had, that is someone competing to us to know better ourselves than we do, which is the algorithms, which is the technology. And he said the importance of meditation, of sports, of things what brings us to present moment now is huge. Because if you don't understand ourselves, we will be dominated by these algorithms. And so we will talk about the ocean and this blue planet, but we are not going to change it if you don't change ourselves. And I hope we can all keep changing ourselves during this quarantine. And I hope this chaos brings a whole new order and an ecological order for our planet. I can't tell you how honored I am of being with all of you here in this panel. I would like to thank you for your time. We know that time is one of the most precious things that humans have, and you are dedicating your time here for spreading the word. And so thank you very much. Thank you very much for the organizers of this event. And I let you, in 30 seconds, each of you say goodbye to everyone, please.
No, we're saying hello. This is what
Yeah,
it's an
good.
extended hello. Now, the next time we meet, I hope that we all have a larger group, that we share organizing successes, and that the fella from Proyecto ROUTE is on board too, because I want to see all that hair. I want to see that guy out here too. Yeah, so we're going to continue to struggle. The struggle continues. It has been a struggle for a long, long time, but this civilization is peaking right now. It can't continue. I don't believe anyone sees a future for the status quo into the infinite future. And we can all take comfort in the fact that no system, no matter how powerful, was ever eternal. So let's organize to change it completely and make one that's truly utopian in its features, and not compromise for simply finding ways to juggle the status quo so that it can sustain itself for another decade or two.
Yeah. I have a line from a poem by W.S. Merwin, and just one line, and it's, "On the last day of planet Earth, I would plant a tree."
Great. It's not goodbye, it's hello, as Charles says.
Aloha.
Hey, Mauro, I just want to say thank you for staying up all night, and it's truly been a pleasure to exchange with you guys. Charles, you've been in the forefront of these battles for so long that you're an example for all of us. And Richard and Judith, real pleasure. Barbara, I can't wait to see your work, and I thank you all for including me in this panel here.
Oh, thank you very much, everyone. It's been a really real pleasure to see you and exchange with you this morning, afternoon, night, depending where you're at the moment. Mauro was talking about Sapiens book and makes me remember the Unhabitable Earth from David Wallace Wells. And I read this book a few months ago, and I was really impressed how we should reconnect, how we should rethink the political nihilism has to end. We need to admit the difficulty, the human difficulty to comprehend what's going on and change, make a real change, and also incorporate the responsibility and the compromise to see this change happening. So we are together on this one. I hope we're going to have more opportunities to exchange. I want to wrap up talking about, again, my movement, the movement I'm co-founder. We have 3 focal points: the Women's League for the Ocean. In Portuguese, it's Liga das Mulheres pelos Oceanos.
I'm a fan of you.
We talk about ocean pollution and the consequences of climate change, the overexploitation of the marine resources and pollution of the seas, mainly plastic, and the lack of basic sanitation. We have an Instagram page. It's in Portuguese for the moment, but if you want more information, I'm here available to talk afterwards. Thank you very much, and I wish you a wonderful Ocean Day together.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you all. And I'd like also to thank my supporters. I'm here during the night at the University of Newcastle in Australia, and also to thank my partners at Institute Aprender Ecologia, EcoSurf, who are joining for the Surf Reserves program. And I also would like to thank the organizers of this event. It was idealized by the ROUTE Global, co-realized by Agência Água, Blue Ocean, and Surf Stone House. Special partners ROUTE Brazil, ROUTE Portugal, and ROUTE USA. Thank you guys very much, and I hope we can connect back again.
Okay.
Thank you, Mauro. Sorry, just
Go ahead.
I remember Sebastian asked my work. So if anybody wants to check it out, my Instagram, it's Barbara Veiga Photography. So perhaps you guys can take a note and take notes and see also my webpage, which is barbaraveiga.com. Thank you.
I will also ask for connections of all of you through social media, so we keep together and let's try to make something to make it better. Have a good day for all of you, and see you next time.
All right.
Thank you for the audience that was with us all this time, and I apologize if I could not we could not answer all the questions that people send through the chat, but I promise that I'll be more experienced next time, and we will have time for answer all the questions. Thank you, and let's go. ROUTE.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Obrigada, Mauro. Obrigada, Natália.
Bye. Simão, tá aí? Are you there, Simão? We are still connected here.